Thank you, Madam Speaker. Today in our Judiciary Committee was quite interesting. For some people, it was quite a role reversal. We had a hearing on the potential reauthorization of the FISA courts and discussions about powers of our DOJ, FBI, NSA under what's often referred to as Section 215. It was interesting in the way of role reversals because for years we've been told that Democrats are the real civil libertarians. They're the ones that are trying to defend privacy rights, rights of Americans to think what they want, do what they want, and without being interrupted or spied upon by the federal government. Yet today, over and over, we heard apologies basically from our Democratic friends to the representative of the Department of Justice, the FBI, and National Security Administration for comments by some Republicans. There really was no need to apologize. We weren't attacking these three individual witnesses. But there are issues that are still unresolved that many of my friends across the aisle used to be concerned about. Privacy and Fourth Amendment rights that are supposed to protect us from improper search and seizure or spying or surveillance being one of the more important. So we had these witnesses, and it was interesting. And if I were our friend Israel, I would be very concerned because I asked these representatives, first of all, does the Department of Justice, the FBI, or the NSA consider Russia to be a known terrorist organization under Section 215? Each of the representatives indicated in turn that they could not answer that question. Well, the silence seemed to speak volumes to me. Should have been an easy question to answer. I asked about Israel. Does the DOJ, FBI, or NSA consider ambassador from Israel to be a representative of a terrorist organization? And they couldn't answer that question. That is quite interesting. But my concern arose out of reading and hearing in prior years about how, apparently Jeff Sessions was surveilled because he was speaking to a Russian ambassador, and there were reports that the ambassador from Israel had been surveilled. So under 215, they're supposed to be part of either a known terrorist or part of ally, someone who identifies with a known terrorist organization. So interesting that things have evolved the way they have, so that our own intelligence can't tell us whether Russia or Israel are considered terrorist organizations. Quite alarming. But ever since I first got here, my first term, when we took up a reauthorization of the Patriot Act, and I understood when the Patriot Act was passed, it was just days after, maybe a week or so after 9/11. And we didn't know who had hit us. Were they about to hit us again? Were 3,000 or more people going to be dying any day, again and again? And so I wasn't here, but Congress passed this overarching bill that gave way too much power to the government. But I understand the atmosphere here at the time. Then Section 215 came up for reauthorization, as has the FISA courts in recent years. And it is important that we continue to take a look at those, and I think it's extremely important that we have sunsets. Otherwise, if there is not the chance that this court or these powers will go away, then we always have trouble, no matter whether it's a Democrat or Republican administration, always have trouble getting people to come up and speak frankly or get records so we know what may have occurred, whether it was abused or not. But I go to Section 215, and I've been concerned about some of this language when I first got here. As a former litigator, prosecutor, judge, chief justice, I know words mean things. And this section says that basically the FBI can make an application for an order requiring production of tangible things for an investigation to obtain foreign intelligence information not concerning a U.S. person, or to protect against international terrorism, or clandestine intelligence activity. Now, I asked this several years ago when this was being pushed for reauthorization. What does clandestine intelligence activity mean? What does that mean? Because to me, if I'm the judge, you come to me and you want a warrant, and you say, we have caught somebody engaged in clandestine intelligence activities. Wow, that is so broad. So the question I asked today, I asked years ago, could that mean that if my neighbor is peering, watching my yard from behind his or her curtain, well, that's clandestine. They're hiding behind the curtain. They're trying to see what's going on. That's gathering intelligence. So would that justify a warrant from the FISA court? Well, they can't answer that question. And they never have, and they never have attempted to answer that question. And in fact, years ago when it was reauthorized, they said, well, the representatives, the DOJ, CIA, NSA, they were all saying, look, that really doesn't come into play particularly. Oh, well, good, then let's eliminate it. Well, no, we don't want to eliminate our ability to get a warrant based on clandestine intelligence activities. Well, what does that mean? How has it been used? Couldn't get an answer. But they sure wanted to keep it in there. What does that mean? It doesn't say foreign clandestine intelligence. It doesn't say terrorist clandestine intelligence. So words mean things. Why do they keep wanting that language in there? And it used to be not as big of a concern until we find out that the FISA courts basically, we might call them the RS courts instead of the FISA courts. The FISA courts are basically RS courts, rubber stamp courts, because basically when the federal government comes in, they get what they want. And I was one, having, again, been a judge, I knew I had law officers come before me many times. Sometimes they'd come to my house at 2 or 3 in the morning. They'd need a warrant quickly. And the requirements of the Constitution are very clear. And I just happened to have a copy of the Constitution. Amendment 4 says, the right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrants shall issue but upon probable cause supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. And that particularity, particularly describing, those words are very important, as is the 2 words probable cause. So we were taught, and as a judge I applied it, if a law officer wants a warrant, sometimes there were FBI that would come. Sometimes they would come with other law officers. But they knew under the Constitution, they normally did a very good job, but you have to have an affidavit that establishes there is probable cause to believe a crime was committed and probable cause to believe the person whose records were sought to be seized had probably committed the crime. And it's not enough to just allege we have probable cause to believe a crime was committed and this person committed it. That's not enough. The affidavit must describe facts, not conclusions, but facts that establish that, yeah, probably a crime was committed and probably this person did, and that's why we need this record, that's why we need the search warrant, that's why we need to be able to go look for these specific records, specific things. So imagine my surprise when a FISA court order was leaked, and it was an order by the FISA court here in Washington, and it says it's ordered custodial records shall produce to the NSA upon service of this order and continue production on an ongoing daily basis thereafter for the duration of this order, unless otherwise ordered by the court. All call detail records or telephonic metadata created by Verizon for communications, 1, between the United States and abroad, or 2, wholly within the United States, including local telephone calls. This order does not require Verizon to produce telephonic metadata for communications wholly originating and terminating in foreign countries. So that was interesting to me because, first of all, what this order is going after, supposedly under Section 215, trying to monitor terrorist activity, it only wanted calls by Americans. Whereas if you're an American in the United States, you have constitutional rights, including the Fourth Amendment, that this certainly appears to violate. There is no allegation of probable cause a crime was committed, no allegation that Verizon or the records of the people being sought had committed a crime. It just basically said, apparently, the application apparently said, must have, because this is the way the order reads, we want everybody's records that Verizon has if they're protected by the Fourth Amendment, but we don't want anybody's records, foreign records, even though they're not protected by the Constitution and Fourth Amendment right against unfair search and seizure. Really interesting role reversal right here. You're protecting the people that have no protection and going after the people that are protected by the Fourth Amendment. So it's caused a lot of concerns about, well, what else does the FISA court rubber stamp? I mean, it seems kind of silly, but we've been told that Section 215 that I've read from here was reformed and that the NSA ended their program of gathering records. But the thing is, as long as there's a FISA court and as long as there's a Section 215 that's even half as broad as it currently is, any of our law enforcement can go back into the FISA court and get a warrant rubber stamped, which is basically what happened, it appears, in the FISA orders regarding the Trump campaign. And the thing, as a former judge, that really grieves me most about the FISA court is that we have not had a FISA judge that had sufficient righteous indignation to demand Comey, Rosenstein, McCabe, if he participated, any of those participants to come in before them and show cause as to why they should not go to jail for committing a fraud upon the court, which it sure appears they did. They were not truthful about the Russia hoax, about the so-called Russian dossier that a discredited, dishonest former MI6 agent in England put together based on representations by Russian agents that he now admits they could have worked for Putin. I don't know. And that being purchased, paid for by the DNC and the Clinton campaign through Fusion GPS, which included Nellie Orr, who was married to Bruce Orr, that kept bringing material from them that had been purchased to the FBI, to the DOJ. The FISA court, I mean, this more than anything else caused me to think maybe we need to do away with the FISA court, go back to the way things were, because we didn't have a FISA judge involved in this with enough morality, enough righteousness, enough honesty to recognize that a fraud against their court was committed and to be offended by it. If somebody came in and got a warrant from me, they did not provide me the true facts, and they knew their source could not be verified, and they swore that this was verified, somebody be going to jail. That is so dishonest. And people in those kind of positions that we trust with so much power, they need to be honest, and especially before a judge. But apparently we have one or more FISA judges that are not offended to be lied to. Maybe it's because they see it was going for a good cause to try to stop Donald Trump campaign or get him thrown out as president. That's a worthy cause, even though it was a dishonest application, affidavit, and warrant. That's okay with the FISA judge. I would really like to have the FISA judges come before our committee and testify about their lack of morality, their lack of integrity, their not caring that people would come in and submit lies and verify something they knew and intentionally deceived about being unverifiable. So we've got some work to do, and I'm very grateful to Congresswoman Zoe Lofgren. I believe she was sincere today in the hearing when she looked down the dais at me and my Republican friends and said, we know there are reforms that need to be made. We know that there are amendments that need to occur regarding this system, and we look forward to working with our friends on the other side of the aisle. I hope that's true, because you know, this little experiment in a constitutional democratic republic is in jeopardy. And I know people want to talk about climate change, but 12 years from now, when we're told the world may end if we don't do something about climate change, this little constitutional republic will have ceased to be based on the Constitution, which has already set a record for being the longest basis for a country in the history of the world. So we got work to do, and I hope that we can do it in a bipartisan manner. Even if you read the Bible about King David, what you learn is that even the finest people in the world, if they're not held accountable, if there's not some accountability, can do some really egregious things. And that's our obligation here in Congress. Let's have some accountability. I yield back.